Alright, welcome back, Brush Monkeys. This video isn't going to be anywhere near as long as the last one. This one's just doing the shade washes, and this will be fairly quick and dirty. The workhorse brush that we used for the last one is going to be put away. This one we're going to stick with mostly this large brush, the Citadel base brush. And we're just putting base coats on everything. Or not base coats, we're putting shade washes on everything. Now, like I said before, I wanted to do the skin in kind of a bluish tone, and you can see he's got really, really pale skin right now. But at the same time, Citadel's Drakenhof Nightshade is a really strong blue. So we're going to try something a little bit different here. I'm going to kind of experiment with this. I've never done this before. We're going to do 3 drops of Drakenhof Nightshade. And I'm going to thin it with about 6 drops of Citadel's Lamian Medium. And Lamian Medium is just like it sounds. It's a medium, and it's intended to thin the paint without. It's essentially paint without pigment. It thins the paint without diluting any of the pigment in it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Go and give it 7 just because I got a weird obsession with the number 7. And if that's too thick, then we can always put it on. Put a little more in there. That's looking like about the consistency I want. So we're going to try it out on this arm first. The thing with the shade washes is they have a tendency to tint the entire thing, which I kind of want and kind of don't. Like, I want the skin tone to still show through, but I also want it to be kind of bluish in the shadows and kind of bluish all over. And that is about, that's just about perfect. That's about exactly what I was looking for there. See, now I'm getting a nice bluish tone while and blue in the shadows, while still maintaining that kind of flesh color to the rest of it. And once I layer on the flesh highlights, it'll be about right. So that's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with how that came out. For just essentially pulling it out my rear, I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. That's one of the fun things about painting miniatures, is that sometimes experiments work out and sometimes they don't. And when they work out the first time, it's really kind of an amazing feeling. And when they don't work out, it's still kind of fun. Trying to figure out what went wrong and fix it. And figure out how to do it better the next time. So, with the exception of this one, because it's kind of fidgety and fiddly, the rest of these shade washes are going to be pretty quick and dirty. Agrax Earthshade is going to really be the workhorse of this because of all the leather and gold and steel and everything else. And the majority of it is going to be Agrax Earthshade. I just wanted to get this skin tone down. Now, when I go to, in a future video, we'll talk about layering and highlighting and a couple different ways to go about doing those. And when we do that, I'll show you what I have planned for the skin. It will involve doing the same step basically with the Lamian Medium and the blue glaze instead of the shade wash. So there you go. That's pretty good blue right there. All right, so Agrax Earthshade next. And like I said, this is going to be the majority of it, so we're going to put a lot of this on there. By the way, in a future video, we'll go into decanting the washes from these big pots that Citadel sells them in into dropper bottles, because there's a lot of, it's almost like a running joke on the internet of people spilling their wash pots, and now they've got shade wash everywhere, and it's really pretty easily avoidable by just not having them in the pots. Put your shade washes in dropper bottles, and then it doesn't matter if you spill them, because dropper bottles don't leak like that. Now notice this guy's got two big horns on either side of his head. What I'm going to do with this is, horns, for the most part, tend to get darker as you go further out to the end of the horn. So I'm going to let this shade wash dry, and then we're going to put another layer on that starts from like the middle of the horn out to the end of the horn. And then once that dries, we'll do a third layer that goes from about a quarter of the way up the horn out to the end. And we'll just layer on shade washes, and that will that'll build up that depth of color that you see on natural horns. Now you'll notice with this shade wash, I'm not being particularly neat about this. You really don't have to be. You're just kind of slopping it on there, and it'll flow into the cracks and crevices the way you want it. And since most of this guy is fur and leather anyway, really not necessary to be too terribly careful about it. If it wasn't for the skin tones on him, I probably would have done this step with an airbrush, to be honest, and just blow shade wash all over the dude. But because he's got skin tones, I gotta take it easy on that. Not better at all, can't tell. Fur is one of those things that's going to eat up a lot of shade wash, because you got to get in all those little crevices, so you almost kind of have to stipple it on there. There we go. You can kind of see already the darkening effect this is having, and the lining effect. It's bringing out that detail in the checkerboard. Like you can see, the red had kind of a checkerboard effect to it, and it's bringing out that detail because it's shade washing into all those little lines. Now when you get around the feet, this is where you need to be a little bit careful, because you can't just slop a lot of the stuff on there. That Agrax Earthshade will get into the snow, and you really don't want it in the snow. I've got a different wash that I'll use for the snow. Actually, I lied. I'm going to use the rest of this Drakenhof Nightshade mixed with the Lamian Medium for the snow, which is essentially the same. I have what I call a whitewash, which is Drakenhof Nightshade and Nuln Oil and thinned way down, and it's spiffy and all that, and it's a good wash for washing white, whether you're doing a white cloak or white snow or anything like that. Okay, I'm also going to do these skulls here, and I'm almost out of wash. Alright, there's that. And because that's quite a bit bigger thing, I'm going to use, appropriately enough, a wash brush. Needs a lot more of that. Okay, so I take that back. I am going to use my whitewash. Again, I'm going to use kind of a lot of it because A, it's thin, and B, in washing white. And you can see once I put it on there, there's not a whole lot of difference between my whitewash and the thin Drakenhof nightshade. It's pretty close to the same thing. Now this is kind of weird. It's making the snow look blue, and it does. But when I go back over and I've got Praxeti white to dry brush the snow with, when I go back over and dry brush the snow with that, you're only going to see this blue down in the recesses of the snow and kind of in the shadows of the frost giant. And it'll look a lot better. And that's what I was talking about not letting the shade wash get in the Agrax Earthshade, get around the base. Alright, put a little more Agrax on there and do the arms. Like I said, this wasn't going to be anywhere near as long a video as the base coats video, because base coating really takes a lot longer to do than shade washing. Shade washing is pretty quick and dirty. Alright, this is getting there. I'm trying to, you'll notice it's kind of puddling in places, and if you don't want your shade wash to puddle, which you really don't, you kind of want it to be a kind of even color all the way around. You want the puddle in the recesses, but you don't want like here along the top of the axe blade, along this bottom axe blade, it's gathering in puddles around the bottom of the axe blade. Just go ahead and mop that up with your brush and move it somewhere else. In this case, it's going into the knot work on the other side. There we go. Something I just noticed, if you're ever in a position where you're doing this and you've just got the base held on by a little tab right in there in the handle, you notice when I was moving the brush around, it kind of moves the handle a little bit, the arm. Go ahead and just squeeze down on the handle so that the piece stays stationary in there. You really don't want that moving around a lot. There we go. Okay, and last but not least, kind of done with that brush. I'm going to use the Citadel Carroburg Crimson to do his beard and hair. Pardon me while I clean off my wash pot. Every so often you'll get, when you do this, the pots that I use aren't entirely airtight, so occasionally when you're shaking them up you get gunk down in the threads, And if that's the case, just go ahead and dig it. Just wait till it dries and dig it out, like this. There you go. All right, fantastic. If you don't clean it out, then it can affect whether or not your threads close entirely, and then your paint and wash dries out. Okay. And the beard and hair is done pretty much just the same way as fur. You just kind of stipple it on there. Guide it into the crevices. There we go. All right. All right, so the horns. Said I was going to do the horns again. Okay, for the second layer on the horns, we're going to start from about halfway, right about there, and just go to the end of the horn, or end of the horn cap right there. Do that for both horns. Clean up any mistakes you made with the red. There we go. So there's that. And go back and catch any parts that you might have missed. Redo anything you want a little darker. You really want that detail out as much as possible. Okay. And even though that's still wet, we're going to go ahead and do the end of it again, just to wrap this up. When this is dry, you're going to go where we started about halfway here. We're going to start about 2/3 of the way. We're going to start right about there and go up. And you can do this as often as you want. Put as many layers in as you want. To get as much of a transition as you want, to get as dark a color as you want. When you get to where it's a really, really ridiculously dark brown, you might want to switch over to Nuln Oil and do a black on the very, very end. That's really all there is to it. Not sure why that's not taken on the underside there. So there you go. That's all. That's really all that's involved in the shade washes. It's pretty, like I said, it's pretty quick and dirty and pretty easy. And just like that, we're done. So that's it for shade washes. Next time, join us next time for the highlights and shadows. I'll show you what this looks like when it's all dry and everything, and you can see how much darker it is. And then when we do the highlights and layering, I'll show you the two different ways of doing that, and we'll wrap this guy up. All right, so Thanks for your time, and hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Hey everybody, Tom from Flying Monkey Studios here. Thanks for watching my videos. If you like what you saw, hit the like button. If you want to be notified when new videos come out, click subscribe. And in the meantime, if you want to support me in any way, check out my Patreon site, Facebook page, and Instagram page. And comment below on what you want to see on future videos. Thanks a lot. See you later.